The gymnasium smelled like sweat and polished wood, a familiar cocktail that clung to my skin as I stumbled out of cheerleading practice. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the scuffed floor where my teammates and I had spent the last 3 hours perfecting a routine that felt like it might kill us before we ever performed it. My legs ached with a deep, throbbing pain that seemed to pulse in time with my heartbeat, and my shoulders were so tight I could barely lift my arms to sling my duffel bag over my back. At 17, I like to think I was tough, but cheerleading wasn't just pom-poms and smiles, it was grueling, athletic, and unforgiving. But tonight, my body was staging a full-on rebellion. The crisp November air hit me like a slap as I pushed through the double doors into the parking lot, my breath fogging in the twilight. I tugged my hoodie tighter around my cheer uniform, the sequined skirt peeking out beneath the hem, and scanned the lot for Dad's truck. He was there, as always, parked under the flickering street lamp in his beat-up Ford pickup, the one with the dented fender and the faded blue paint that Mom swore was an eyesore. The engine rumbled softly, and I could see the glow of the dashboard lights illuminating his face as he leaned back in the driver's seat, probably listening to his favorite classic rock station. When he spotted me, he waved, his grin wide and warm, the kind that made you feel like everything was going to be okay, no matter how much your muscles screamed. I shuffled over, my sneakers dragging on the asphalt, and yanked open the passenger door, wincing as I tossed my bag into the backseat. "Rough one today, huh, Em?" Dad said, his voice carrying that familiar mix of amusement and concern. He turned down the radio, where some guitar riff was fading out, and gave me a once-over, like he could see the exhaustion etched into my bones. "You have no idea," I groaned, collapsing into the seat. The warmth from the truck seat enveloped me, thawing the chill that had settled into my skin. Coach Reynolds was on a warpath. We ran the pyramid like 10 times, and I swear she's trying to turn us into robots. "My legs are officially out of commission." Dad chuckled, the sound low and rumbling, like gravel shifting. "You smell like sweat and determination, kiddo. Proud of you." He shifted the truck into gear, pulling out of the lot with the ease of someone who'd done this pickup routine 100 times. The streetlights streaked past, their glow blurring into lines of gold against the darkening sky, and I let my head loll against the headrest, too tired to care about the way my ponytail was probably a frizzy mess. The ride home was quiet, save for the soft hum of the radio and the occasional creak of the truck's suspension. Dad didn't push me to talk, which was one of the things I loved about him. Some parents would have peppered me with questions. "So how was practice? Did you nail the routine? What's coach saying about the competition?" But Dad just let me be. He knew I'd spill when I was ready, and tonight, I wasn't. I just wanted to sink into the warmth of the truck and forget the way Coach had yelled at me for wobbling during the final stunt, or how my best friend, Jess, had whispered that she was thinking of quitting the squad because the pressure was too much. I stared out the window, watching the familiar streets of our suburban neighborhood roll by, and neat lawns, glowing porch lights, the occasional dog walker bundled up against the cold. It was comforting, in a way. How predictable it all was. When we pulled into the driveway, the house looked like it always did, a 2-story brick colonial with white shutters and a slightly overgrown maple tree out front. Mom's car was in theory. She was probably still at the hospital, working the late shift as a nurse, but the living room windows glowed with the soft light of the lamp we always left on. I dragged myself out of the truck, my duffel bag feeling like it weighed 100 pounds, and followed Dad inside. The smell of leftover chili from last night lingered in the air, mingling with the faint scent of pine from the air freshener Mom insisted on keeping in the entryway. I kicked off my sneakers by the door and collapsed onto the living room couch with a dramatic flop, sprawling across the cushions like a starfish. "You gonna survive, or do I need to call in a medic?" Dad asked, leaning against the doorway with his arms crossed. He'd shed his jacket, revealing the faded flannel shirt he always wore, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His hair was starting to gray at the temples, but he still had that sturdy, dependable look, like he could build a house with his bare hands, which, I guess, wasn't far from the truth. He worked construction, spending his days hauling lumber and climbing scaffolds, coming home with sawdust in his hair and calluses on his hands. "My legs are dead," I muttered, rubbing my calves through my leggings. "I'm not moving until graduation, maybe not even then," he laughed, shaking his head, and disappeared into the kitchen. I heard the fridge door open and close, the clink of a glass, and then he was back, holding a bottle of water and a small tub of muscle cream Mom swore by for her post-marathon aches. "Scoot over," he said, nudging my feet aside as he sat on the edge of the couch. "Let's see if we can bring those legs back to life." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "You? Giving me a massage? Since when are you Mr. Spa?" I teased, propping myself up on my elbows. Dad wasn't exactly the touchy-feely type. Hugs were his go-to, sure, but this was next level. "Hey, I'm a man of many talents," he said, mock offended, unscrewing the cap of the muscle cream. "Besides, I used to help your mom after her marathons. I know a thing or two about sore muscles. Now, stop sassing me and stretch out those legs." I hesitated, feeling a little weird about it, but the ache in my calves was too persuasive. I swung my legs across his lap, kicking off my socks so the cream wouldn't ruin them. The first touch of his hands was cold from the cream, and I flinched, but then he started working it into my muscles with slow, steady pressure, and I couldn't help but sigh. It stung at first, the menthol biting into my skin, but then a warm relief spread through my calves, loosening the knots that had been screaming at me all evening. "Okay," I mumbled, closing my eyes. "You're hired." He chuckled, his hands moving methodically, like he was kneading dough or smoothing out a piece of wood in his workshop. "Don't get used to it. This is a one-night-only deal." But there was a warmth in his voice, a quiet pride that made my chest ache in a different way. Dad wasn't big on grand gestures. He didn't write long letters or give flowery speeches about moments like this. When he showed up in his quiet, steady way, meant more than any words could. As he worked, he started asking about practice. Not the pushy kind of questions, but gentle ones, like he was genuinely curious. "So, what's this new routine like? You guys still doing that flip thing that scared the hell out of me last year?" I laughed, picturing him in the bleachers at last season's competition, gripping the railing like he thought I was going to catapult into the ceiling. "It's called a basket toss, Dad, and yeah, we're still doing it, except now Coach wants me to be the flyer for the finale, which is terrifying. I'm not exactly tiny, you know. At 5'6", I was taller than most of the girls on the squad, and while I was strong, the idea of being launched into the air by my teammates made my stomach lurch. "You'll nail it," he said without hesitation. "You always do. Remember that first game when you dropped your pom-poms in the middle of the routine? You picked AM up and kept going like nothing happened." "Tough as nails. That's you." I snorted, but his confidence warmed me more than the muscle cream. We talked a little more about how Jess was struggling with the pressure, how Coach Reynolds had a vendetta against anyone who missed a beat, how I was secretly worried about the regional competition next month. Dad listened. Really listened, his hands never stopping their steady rhythm. It was like the act of massaging my legs grounded us both, giving us a space to talk without the usual rush of dinner or homework or Mom's hospital stories. I hadn't realized how much I needed that, how the weight of practice and school and the looming specter of college applications had been piling up like bricks on my shoulders. When he finished, he capped the cream and handed me the water bottle. "Drink up," he said, standing to stretch. "You're probably dehydrated from all that flapping and kicking." I sat up, flexing my legs experimentally. They still ached, but it was a dull, manageable kind of ache now, not the sharp, screaming pain from before. "You're a miracle worker," I said, grinning. "Seriously, Dad, where'd you learn to do that?" "Years of keeping up with your mom's crazy running habits," he said, but I caught the slight wince as he rolled his shoulders, like he was trying to shake off his own discomfort. Dad was 42, not old by any stretch, but construction wasn't kind to the body. I'd seen him come home some days, moving slower than usual, rubbing his lower back when he thought no one was watching. He never complained, thought Dad wasn't the type. He'd just pour himself a coffee, crack a joke, and keep going. I studied him now, noticing the way his shoulders slumped slightly, the faint lines of fatigue around his eyes. "Hey," I said, an idea forming. "You're probably sore too, right? All that hauling lumber at the site." "Don't pretend you're not." He waved it off, heading for the kitchen. "Nah, I'm fine. Built like an ox, remember?" But I wasn't buying it. I grabbed the tub of muscle cream and stood, pointing at the couch. "Nope, your turn. Sit." You don't have to," he started, but I cut him off. "Sit," I said, channeling Mom's no-nonsense tone, the one she used when she was wrangling patients or convincing me to eat my vegetables. Dad sighed, but there was a smile tugging at his lips as he gave in, lowering himself onto the couch with a mock groan. "Fine, but don't expect me to enjoy it," he said, leaning forward so I could reach his shoulders. I rolled my eyes, unscrewing the cap and scooping out a small dollop of the cream. It smelled sharp and medicinal, like wintergreen and determination, and I hesitated for a second, feeling a little awkward. I'd never done anything like this before. Your dad was always the one taking care of me, not the other way around. But the thought of him carrying his own aches, day after day, without saying a word made me want to do something, anything, to help. I started with his shoulders, pressing my fingers into the tight muscles through his flannel shirt. They were hard as rocks, knotted from hours of lifting and carrying, and I realized how little I knew about what his days were actually like. He'd tell stories sometimes, about the guys on the crew or the ridiculous demands of some architect, but he never talked about the toll it took. My hands felt clumsy at first, fumbling to find the right pressure, but I mimicked what he'd done, kneading slow circles into the knots. He let out a low grunt, not quite a groan, and I froze. "Too hard?" "Nah, you're good," he said, his voice softer now. "Just a broken bar, not used to this." "Feels nice." I kept going, focusing on the rhythm, the way the cream warmed under my fingers. The house was quiet around us, just the hum of the fridge in the kitchen and the occasional creak of the couch as Dad shifted. It was strange, this reversal of me taking care of him for once. I thought about all the times he'd been there for me, driving me to my first cheer tryout when I was so nervous I thought I'd puke, sitting through every game even when it was freezing, helping me with math homework even though he swore he was allergic to algebra. He never asked for anything in return, just showed up, steady as the sunrise. "You know," I said, breaking the silence, "you're always doing stuff for me and Mom, but you never let us do anything for you." "It's not fair." He chuckled, the sound vibrating under my hands. "That's my job. Taking care of you too is what I signed up for." "Yeah, but who takes care of you?" I asked, pressing a little harder into a particularly stubborn knot. He didn't answer right away, and I wondered if I'd pushed too far. Dad wasn't big on talking about himself, and Mom always said he was like a vault, keeping everything locked up tight. Finally, he said, "You are, right now." And that's more than enough. My throat tightened, and I focused on the massage to keep from getting sappy. I wasn't good at the emotional stuff, not like Mom, who could cry at a commercial about puppies. But this moment to me and Dad, the quiet house, the simple act of helping each other felt like something I'd carry with me for a long time. I thought about how senior year was speeding by, how soon I'd be applying to colleges, maybe moving away. The idea of leaving home, leaving Dad and his beat-up truck and his terrible puns, made my chest ache in a way I couldn't quite name. When I finished, my hands were tingling from the cream, and Dad stretched, rolling his shoulders with a look of surprise. "Not bad, he said, standing. "You've got a future in physical therapy if cheer doesn't pan out." I laughed, tossing a throw pillow at him, which he caught with ease. "Don't jinx me," I said, but I was grinning. I felt lighter, not just because my legs didn't hurt as much, but because of this small, shared moment. It wasn't flashy or dramatic, just us being us, taking care of each other in the way families do when no one's watching. "All right, go shower," Dad said, pointing toward the stairs. "You're still a walking gym locker." "Rude," I shot back, but I was already heading upstairs, the muscle cream tub still in my hand. At the top of the stairs, I glanced back. Dad was sprawled on the couch now, one arm behind his head, a content smile on his face as he flipped on the TV. The glow of the screen lit up the room, and for a second, I just stood there, watching him. He looked relaxed, maybe for the first time all day, and I felt a quiet pride knowing I'd had a part in that. In my room, I dropped my duffel bag and caught my reflection in the mirror, sweaty, disheveled, still in my cheer uniform. I looked like a mess, but I felt a broken bar grounded. Practice had been brutal, school was overwhelming, and the future loomed like a storm cloud. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, it was just me and Dad, a tub of muscle cream, and a moment of care that felt like an anchor in the chaos. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring: another grueling practice, another fight with Jess, another college essay to stress over, but for now, I was okay. We were okay.